And welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. This meeting is now called to order. And staff, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Emily Thomas.
Present.
Commissioner Stephen Raspy.
Here.
Commissioner Catherine Janoff.
Here.
Commissioner Kylie Clark.
Here.
Vice Chair Jeffrey Barnett.
Here.
And Chair Melanie Hanson.
Here as well. And I will leave it with staff to address the rules of decorum and civility for our town public meetings.
The public is welcome to participate in the meetings, understanding that the purpose of the meeting is to conduct the important business of the town in an efficient and effective manner. For the benefit of the entire community, the Town of Los Gatos asks that all speakers follow the town's meeting guidelines by treating everyone with respect and dignity. This is done by following meeting guidelines set forth in state law, in the town code, and on the cover sheet of the agenda. The town embraces diversity and strongly condemns hate speech and offensive hateful language or racial intolerance of any kind at board, commission, or committee meetings. Town council and staff are well aware of the public's right to disagree with their professional opinion on various town issues. However, antisocial behavior, slander, hatred, and bigotry statements are completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in any way, shape, or form at board, commission, or committee meetings. All public comments at the board, commission, or committee meeting must pertain to items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the town and shall not contain slanderous statements, hatred, and bigotry against non-public officials. The town will go through the following steps if a disturbance results from a member of the public not following these rules. If participating remotely, town staff may mute the individual with an explanation for the record of why muting occurred consistent with this policy. If participating in person, the chair may call a recess for violation of this policy, resulting in the immediate cessation of the audio and video recording and the commissioners exiting the chamber or meeting room. Staff will determine if the individual should be removed or if all members of the public should leave, depending on the extent of the disturbance. In the event that all public members exit, only the press would be allowed back in the meeting. Once the individual or individuals leave, the commissioners would return to the chamber or meeting room and the chair would resume the meeting. Persons disrupting a board, commission, or committee meeting may be cited for violation of the California Penal Code, Section 403.
Thank you for that, staff. And so we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is verbal communications. The Town of Los Gatos strongly encourages public participation in its meetings, and that public participation can take two forms. First is written communications. Written communications that are received prior to the meeting through staff are always welcome and helpful to the work of this planning commission. And then there are two opportunities to participate in verbal communications during the meeting. The first is you can speak on items that are not on the agenda. And then during the hearing on any specific item, you can speak on items that are on the agenda for that particular item. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes should you choose to speak. So I would like to find out now if there is anyone that would like to speak to the commission on items that are not on the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. We do not have anybody in the attendees list at the moment, so no one to speak on verbal communications.
Okay, very good. Then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. And any member of the public or the commission may choose to pull an item from the consent calendar for consideration during the meeting. We have two items on the consent calendar for this evening. The draft minutes of our last planning commission meeting on July 13th, 2022, and then also a continuance for the review and recommendation of the draft objective standards to the town council to allow staff more time to prepare modifications to in accordance with what we asked at the last meeting when we reviewed them. So is there anyone that would like to pull any item from the consent calendar? I don't see anyone. Okay, and are there any recommended changes to the minutes? I don't see anyone, so I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar. Commissioner Janoff.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. And may I please get a second? Commissioner Thomas.
I second.
Okay, very good. If there's no additional discussion, no, it didn't look like there was any comments on the minutes. So I will call the question and please answer yes, no, or abstain. And I will start with Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Raspy.
Chair, I'll vote yes with respect to the minutes, but I'll abstain. I'm sorry, I'll abstain with respect to the minutes since I didn't attend the meeting, and yes with respect to the objective standards.
Okay, very good. Staff, when it's one consent calendar, how do we record that?
We can make note of that in the meeting minutes.
Okay, all right. All right, then I will go to Commissioner Janoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the minutes pass with one abstention, and then the continuance of the objective standards passes unanimously. And I'm sure staff will note it duly in the minutes for our next meeting. So then we can go ahead and move on to the next item, which is our public hearing. And this is requesting approval of a demolition of an existing residence, construction of 4 condominium units that will exceed the floor area ratio standards, and site improvements requiring a grading permit on property zoned R 5 to 12, located at 16195 George Street, APN 529-18-051, architecture and site application S-20-025, and subdivision application M-20-008. Property owner is Robert Bothman. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. George Street Partners, and the applicant is the architect, and the project planner is Mr. Safdie. And so I will go ahead and turn it over to staff and have Mr. Safdie give the staff report.
Through the chair, before we do proceed with this item, it appears that we don't have any representative from the applicant's team here with us this evening.
Oh.
And so in that case, I do believe we need to continue this discussion to another meeting.
Okay.
So the next meeting is August 10th.
Okay.
And so the continuation to a date certain would be to that date.
Okay, well then we will go ahead and I will ask for a motion to for continuance to the next Planning Commission meeting on August 10th. Vice Chair Barnett.
I so move to continue item number 3 to August 10, 2022. For the
Okay.
purpose of having the applicant appear in person.
Okay, and can I get a second? Commissioner Thomas.
I second the motion.
Okay, and so if there are no comments, it doesn't look like we have any comments. I will call the question, and I'll start with Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Raspy.
Yes.
Commissioner Janoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And staff, I don't believe there's any appeal rights for this action by the commission since it's a continuance, but I will ask the question anyways.
That is correct. This is not appealable. It's just a continuance for further discussion.
Okay, well, then that will make this a very short meeting.
Did they ask for the continuance, or do you know why they're not present?
We can ask Ryan Safdie, have you had any communication from the applicant?
Yeah, I have. Thank you for the question. They submitted a presentation to present this evening, and we spoke about the presentation yesterday. I've emailed them within the last 10 minutes asking if they were going to come, and have not received a response.
And it doesn't appear like we have any attendees other than the participants for this commission. Okay, well then we will move forward with the continuance, and then we will go on to the report from Director of Community Development.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have too much to report since the town council has been on recess over July, but we do have our next Housing Element Advisory Board meeting scheduled for August 4th. And I did want to share, as you saw on the agenda tonight, item 2 was continuation of the discussion of objective standards for another month to August 24th. At the last discussion, there was a lot of feedback from the Planning Commission, and I wanted to offer that if there were any additional questions or comments related to this matter, staff does encourage you to submit them to us by August 12th to allow staff the opportunity to provide a response ahead of the discussion on the 24th.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Armour. And I would actually encourage everyone on the commission that because we did have quite a few comments, and also from the public, to get comments into staff and get them in as quickly as possible so we can move this important document along and have it be at the level that we all hope it will be at. Okay, so then we will move on to subcommittee reports and commission matters. In addition to their service on this planning commission, all planning commissioners serve on an additional subcommittee. And in our case, that includes the General Plan Committee, which this year is taking the form of the Housing Element Advisory Board. And then we also serve on the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee. And then finally, the Historic Preservation Committee. Are there any reports from any of the subcommittees this evening? I know the Housing Element has not met, but there are the other 2 committees. And it looks like Commissioner Clark has a report.
Yes, and Commissioner Raspy, if you have anything to add, please go ahead. But the Historic Preservation Committee met today at 4 p.m. and we had 2 public hearings. We approved a request to remove a property from the inventory. And then we saw a request for some alterations to the exterior of the building where White House Black Market is, to the awnings, and then adding some blue at the bottom. And so we approved a change of color from maroon to blue, but did not approve a change in the shape of the awnings. And last, we preliminarily looked at a property that is going to be applying for demolition and provided some feedback on that.
Okay, very good. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair. If I can also add, we were pleased at the HBC to add a new member today, Susan Burnett, who I think many of you are familiar with for her prior service to the town, has joined the HBC as our 5th committee member, and we're happy to have her.
Okay, and question for staff, since I'm chairing the Housing Element, and that also means that we do not have Ms. Burnett on the Housing Element Advisory Board any longer, correct?
That is correct. And through the chair, I will share that we do appear to have the applicant for item number 3 on our agenda today has now joined us. And so I might provide a question to the town attorney as to whether that might still be able to be discussed this evening.
Yes, the commission could make a motion to undo the continuance and hear the item tonight.
Okay, so then I will ask for a motion to remove the continuance and change this to a public hearing. Commissioner Clark.
I move to undo the continuance and to hear item 3 this evening.
Okay, very good. And do I have a second? Commissioner Thomas.
I second the motion.
Okay, and then I will call the question. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Raspy.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Janoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it passes unanimously, and I guess we will go on with the public hearing. And before I turn it to the staff report, I did want to ask if any commissioners had any disclosures that they wanted to make on this item. Okay, and then I would like to see a show of hands from commissioners who have been able to visit the subject property. Okay, very good. So then, Mr. Stafty, would you please give us the staff report?
Certainly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Commissioner Thomas has her hand up.
I'm sorry. My Zoom froze for a second. Did you ask for disclosures?
I did, and I was
Okay.
thinking that you wanted to disclose
The thing that
something.
Yes, I just want to disclose that I know one of the owners of the property, and he was my former landlord, and but I feel that I can make an impartial decision tonight based on the information I've been provided by the town.
Okay, very good, and thank you for that. All right, so then I will go back to Mr. Safdie for the staff report.
Thank you and good evening, commissioners. Before you is a proposal to demolish an existing single-family residence and construct 4 detached single-family condominiums that will exceed the FAR standards, as well as site improvements requiring a grading permit on property zoned multifamily residential. In 2020, the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee reviewed conceptual plans for construction of 4 single-family condominium units at this property. The proposed units were each 2,100 square feet with 440 square foot attached garages. 3 separate driveways were proposed and variances were requested for front and rear setbacks, along with an exception to maximum lot coverage and FAR. The CDAC was generally supportive of the concept, expressing a desire to see detached single-family condominiums as opposed to attached multifamily units. Based on the feedback of the CDAC, as well as public comments during that meeting, which are provided as Exhibit 5 to this report, the applicant conducted neighborhood outreach. They removed the variance and lot coverage exception requests, reduced the number of driveways from 3 to 1, and incorporated increased open space and privacy measures. While the property is not being subdivided into individual lots, a subdivision application is required for the approval of a condominium project for the division of airspace. No division of land is being proposed, as the property would not meet the minimum lot size required for a standard land division in this zone. In response to public concerns that the application was showing a full land division, conditions of approval 17 and 53 have been included to clarify that the application is for a condominium subdivision of air rights and not a full land division. Notes were also added to the plans and project letter to this effect. The condominium units would be 2 stories tall with attached garages and would be an average size of 2,316 square feet. The combined floor area for all 4 units would be 9,264 square feet, when the single-family residential FAR allowance is 4,140, and therefore an exception is being requested. Additionally, the combined area of the garages would be 1,680 square feet, when the FAR allowance is 1,098. It's worth noting that attached multifamily units do not have an FAR maximum and therefore would not need this exception. Outside of the FAR exception request, the project complies with all other town code requirements. Project would also comply with the allowed general plan density of 5 to 12 dwelling units per acre, with a density of approximately 11 dwelling units per acre on a 0.36 acre site. Pursuant to town code, the Planning Commission may allow an exception to exceed the maximum single-family residential FAR if findings can be made that the design is consistent with the provisions of the residential design guidelines and that the lot coverage, setbacks, and FAR are compatible with surrounding development. The applicant provided justification for these findings in their project description letter, and that is provided as Exhibit 9 of the staff report. As noted in the consulting architect report, the 4 proposed new homes are well designed and are similar in height, scale, and character to the Laurel Muse homes immediately across George Street and to other homes nearby. The consultant recommended that additional architectural detailing be added, which was incorporated into the project plans by the applicant. The surrounding neighborhood is made up of 2-story detached single-family and attached multifamily residences. The proposed residences would be 27 feet tall and would be the tallest in the immediate neighborhood by roughly 1 foot. The proposed residence would also be the largest in terms of combined square footage and FAR in the immediate neighborhood when compared to properties under the same zoning classification. However, if that immediate neighborhood was expanded to include the Laurel Muse planned development directly across the street, which occupies half of this neighborhood block, the proposal would no longer be the largest FAR in the neighborhood. A similar proposal was approved by the Planning Commission in 2019, right up the road at 16940 Roberts Road. This proposal was for 3 detached single-family condominium units that also exceeded FAR standards. However, those unit sizes were smaller, with an average size of 1,802 square feet, combined floor area of 5,407, and an FAR of 0.43. Compared to the project here, that's 2,316 square foot unit sizes, 9,264 square feet combined, and an FAR of 0.59. Based on the discussion provided here, as well as staff recommends denial of the Arkansas site and subdivision applications based on concerns related to the FAR exception, as the proposed FAR would be the largest in the immediate neighborhoods for properties under the same zoning classification. This concludes staff's presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. And do any commissioners have questions for Mr. Safdie or staff? Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First, I just wanted to ask, with staff recommending denial, what changes would staff want to see, or what kind of direction would you want this project to possibly go in?
Thank you for the question. I'll start off, and Ms. Armour or Mr. Paulson, feel free to chime in. Staff recommends denial on projects whenever they don't meet town code requirements generally. The FAR being over double what's generally allowed here is what led us to that recommendation. That being said, we do recommend denial on a lot of projects, and the Planning Commission can always approve them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I will add to that as well that, we try to compare just to houses that other properties with the same zoning classification and use type. And so in this situation, it may be that the Planning Commission finds that when compared to the houses across the street, which are in a planned development, that they can make the finding that it is compatible with the immediate neighborhood. And so what Mr. Safdie said is correct, that staff is generally going to recommend denial when they are asking for an exception that is so large, but we did want to provide you the information so that you can consider it all together and consider whether those findings might be made.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And may I ask one more question, Chair?
Yes, of course.
I also wanted to just ask about the trees. So I want a little clarification on what exactly is happening with trees 884 and 886, because I saw measures to protect tree number 884 in the plans, but I didn't see any to protect 886 specifically. So I wanted to ask if both of those trees are going to be preserved.
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, both of them are proposed to remain. Neither are on the subject property. The consulting arborist did call these out as the 2 most important trees in this area. 886 did not require any design changes or any protection based on the location of development. And 884 did have some specific recommendations about floating foundations and moving storm drain lines, and they did add those notes to their project plans.
Thank you. And one thing I also noticed at the site visit was the story poles were kind of in the tree number 884. Is that, I don't know, I just wanted to ask about that, like if that's going to be a problem or anything.
Yes, thank you. Staff did not notice that. We did go out to the site. We actually did have them remove the story poles, or move them at one point because of similar concerns with tying to protected trees. That's not allowed, and we simply weren't aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Very good questions. Commissioner Raspy and then Commissioner Janoff.
Thank you, Chair. A question for staff. I noticed in the materials that the CDAC reviewed this application in February of 2020, and at that point, the units averaged 2,100 square feet each. And today's proposal, they average 2,300 square feet. And I'm curious, what was the change? Did we add bedrooms? Were there other significant changes? It appears that the current proposal is 4 bedrooms for each unit. And I was just wondering about the increase in sizing of the units as we go through this project.
Thank you for the question. I can do my best to answer, but this might be something that the applicant can answer a little better than I can. When projects are submitted for conceptual review, they don't always show a full floor plan. It's really just an outline on the site plan of generally how big they think the units are going to be. In this case, they all did increase slightly, but in terms of if bedroom, I would ask the applicant.
All right, thanks very much. That's helpful.
Okay, and Commissioner Janoff, did you have your hand down, but you had your hand up, so.
I just lowered my hand. Thank you.
Okay, all right, just wanted to make sure. Vice Chair Barnett?
Yes, I have a question for staff. In the staff report, it indicates that the consulting arborist had recommended species that would reach 40 feet in height. And I was wondering if we know whether that, in case is the case here, whether that was met in terms of the landscape plan that was submitted for our consideration.
Yes, and thank you for the question. So they didn't use the exact species recommended from the consulting arborist. What they did was met the intent. So the consulting arborist listed a couple species, like you said, that would get to 40 feet tall. They had their own arborist submit a response letter. And let's see, that was in exhibit 14. And so they are planting trees that are going to meet the intent of the height, size. And the reason they didn't choose the exact species recommended is they wanted something more evergreen where they wouldn't lose their leaves to provide privacy year round versus half of the year.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? We'll have another opportunity after public comments to ask more questions of staff. So I will turn it over to the applicant, who has up to 5 minutes to address the commission.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I want to apologize for being late. I'm slightly Zoom challenged, but I appreciate your patience. Ryan covered a lot of the information. If you go to the next slide, Ryan, please. We show, the lot sizes. The back units are a little larger than the front. The next slide, I think, is good and telling. So this is an overview. And I think when you see the area site maps and the APN maps, kind of our density and our unit size, I don't think is that much. There's not much of or it's much smaller than what's across the street. And I know they had a PD zoning, but it is kind of typical for the neighborhood. If we go to, you guys visited the site today, but there's our existing structure. And I think we go one more, Ryan, please. So we did go to CDAC and we did work with staff on the design, as Ryan noted. Earlier we had the other homes in the setbacks and the front homes pushed up more with their own, or had their own driveway apron. And that made the houses more in the 21 to 2,200 square foot range. When we opened up to the new the setbacks for the zoning with the 8 in the rear and met the front and back, we just built something in that envelope. And we also wanted to have a first floor bedroom and bathroom in all the units, as more people have older parents or people living with them that require a little privacy in a downstairs bedroom. And it kind of shaped our design and overall square footage. And although we exceed the FAR, I think more important is lot coverage. And we are under the lot coverage for the project, because with a single family design and the lot coverage, if we go to the next one, you can see, I mean, just on our street, we have all the Laurel Muse projects listed, and their FAR and lot coverage exceed ours. And we have, all those, that's directly across our street, and it's really our neighborhood. Next slide is it shows the houses across the street, which we're a little taller than, but we're still 3 feet under the maximum height allowable. And we did things like the slab foundation, so we can sprawl tree 884. It reduces our height. Our plate heights are 9 feet and our roof is a 5 and 12. I don't really feel like those are maxing out the height. Next slide, please. So I think this landscape plan really shows the open space and like the room around all the units. We have usable yards, access, little things people don't think about in common interest development, but where your garbage cans go and things that make a better living experience for the neighbors and the owners. Also, having the houses, you can see here, if you attached the units at the garages and even at the entry of the back, you're just creating like a boxier horseshoe design with less landscaping and less open space and airspace. We have less windows, and I think it's just inferior. The next slides have the floor plans. So you can see, while that we are over the FAR, they're not egregious in size. We have the downstairs bedroom and all the units. It's unit 1, and then you can see if we move on to the next one, where we have it there as well. And all the items that are clouded in red were additions or changes made to work with the consulting arborist and staff on the design. And we think, although we do exceed the FAR, it kind of meets with the spirit of infill construction or development. And this site's a transitional area. You have multifamily, you have commercial on Roberts Road, walkable to schools, walkable to stores. It's kind of a site made for infill, in our opinion. So if anyone has any questions, I do my best to answer them now.
Thank you for your presentation. Do any commissioners have questions for the applicant? Commissioner Jana, and then Vice Chair Burnett.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Just a couple of questions. I note in the consulting architect's comments that more architectural detail would be beneficial to add, and I don't see in the current set of plans in Exhibit 15 those details that the consulting architect recommended in his notes. Can you comment? I noted that in your response you talked about window boxes, but I don't think it's just simply window boxes. Can you comment about what architectural detail you are adding to your elevations in response to the consulting architect?
So some of the, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So some of the items that we added the window boxes. We changed our corbel details and added them. We changed the window trim to have a 2x6 headpiece. We recessed the garages, increased the size of porch posts, and those were all the things we did.
So when I look at the architectural detail that is evident in the development across the street on the Laurel Mews, there's a considerable variety and there's just an incredible amount of detail that's gone into those homes. And we may or may not be looking at the 225 requirements of the residential design guidelines, but it appears to me that the elevations of the facades, at least at the front units, are looking pretty plain still. I'm not convinced at this time that you've met the spirit of what the consulting architect was recommending, but I'm open to listening to other commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Janov and Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes, I note that for this project, covenants, conditions, and restrictions will be required. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about what that would be in terms of maintenance of the private drive that's on Lot 2, and also if there's neglected maintenance of one of the homes.
I think all those items can be addressed in the CCNRs, but usually the driveway would require a maintenance agreement. And then, I know parking is a premium, have notes in the CCNRs about using garages for parking, maintenance of garbage cans and of course, yard maintenance. We would follow, direction of the.
Yes.
We'd follow direction of, working with staff on the CCNRs and conditions of approval.
Okay, so did that answer your question, Vice Chair Barnett?
I appreciate the response, and my only concern is in the unexpected event that there is deterioration of one of the houses, which is affecting the other residences, that there would be some provision for the other homes to have enforcement rights.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other questions from commissioners? I would like to ask the question that Commissioner Raspy was asking staff, which is that, and I think you somewhat alluded to it in your presentation, but I wanted to ask it more directly. When the CDA saw this, and I was actually sitting on the CDA during 2020, the unit sizes were smaller, and so what prompted increasing the average unit size?
For me or for staff?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, it just, when we adjusted the layout from having 3 separate driveways to 1 center driveway, and we worked with inside the setbacks, we sat the footprint of the first floor in, and there's just there can be more room on the second floor. So it just worked out that way. And it's probably went from 2,200 and change to an average of 2,316. So it's not a huge difference in the amount of square footage.
Okay, all right, I think that answers that. And I would also wanted to ask you, you mentioned, and I think this is a very positive change, was adding first floor bedroom units. I've been very vocal about that during my entire time on the Planning Commission for older residents. In this case, it might be an older family member. Do all units have a first floor bedroom or just some of them?
All 4 units have a first floor bedroom and a full bath with a walk-in shower for that purpose.
Very good. Thank you for that. Do any other commissioners have questions? I don't hear anyone. So now it would be time to take public comments on this item and verbal communications. However, I believe that the applicant is the only one in the attendees.
That's
for participants. Correct. Okay. All right. So we won't have any public comments. And we didn't receive any written comments from the public on this item either. So I will go back to the applicant, and you have up to an additional 3 minutes to address the commission. Normally that would be time to address public comments. but you have that opportunity to speak to us for an additional 3 minutes.
I don't really have much more to say, but I just think, at the direction of CDAC and, Ryan and I have worked closely on the project. We did have some challenges. We lost our architect towards the end, so making little detail revisions and things were a little challenging, but Ryan and staff worked with us, and, we're happy to make, small adjustments and, make the project good for the community. But we feel it fits in. And, if you take kind of the spirit of the need for housing and state mandate for infill projects, I think it's a good project. I think people prefer having a single family home. It does give you more pride in ownership. And when you live in a common interest development and you make that choice, you accept certain things, about being a good neighbor and maintaining upkeep. And those things can be enforced in CCNRs and have direction. And I just think they're good functional homes that'll allow families to live in the neighborhood and enjoy your community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And so I will ask commissioners if you have any additional questions for the applicant before I close the public hearing. Commissioner Jana.
Try this one more time. I note in your comments that you view these as functional units, and I agree. I think that the idea of the 4 units on the lot makes sense. But I'd like to see you make changes that are minor architectural changes so that it's not reading just as functional, but as a beautiful set of homes as well. So my question is, would you be willing to add additional architectural details consistent with what the consulting architect recommended? And you've got numerous examples across the street at Laurel Muse. Would you be willing to make additional changes to beautify the functionality of these units?
I think we would be open to that and be willing to do that. I just wouldn't want them to match. I would like them to have their own look and not be just a carbon copy. And I notice, a lot of people, those houses are beautiful and well done. And I think you go throughout the neighborhood, there's a lot of sort of carbon copies in those Gatos of those homes. And we're happy to add details and work on them, but we want to have our own aesthetic.
And I appreciate that. I think it's a good thing to have your own aesthetic, and it's a unique project, and it's a good thing to have a unique look. I think it still reads like functional boxes still. So I would encourage you to add that detail, and I appreciate your willingness to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jana. Do any other commissioners have questions for the applicant before I close the public hearing? Okay, I don't see any additional questions. So I will close the public hearing, and then I will go back to the commission to ask if you have any additional questions of staff, if you would like to comment on the application, or if anyone is ready to make a motion, but probably not that just yet. So we'll start with any questions for staff. Commissioner Jana, and then Commissioner Clark.
Thank you. One comment for staff, which I think is a correction. The condition of approval number 61 still refers to 3 separate driveways. So that should probably be changed to reflect the current single access. So then I would just like to comment overall. I think to me, this is an exciting project. It accomplishes what those of us on the General Plan Advisory Committee and are serving on the Housing Element Advisory Board are looking for in Los Gatos in terms of appropriate infill. And one of the recommendations that the Housing Element Advisory Board is making is for staff to be able to make the decisions about exceeding FARs or providing bonuses if you add a greater number of units on a property. I think this is a kind of this is a project that to me would fall into that category going forward in the future. I don't have any problem with the FAR being exceeded to this degree. When you compare it to the density of the planned development across the street, it looks rather spacious in terms of the layout. Appreciate that there are 4 homes, and even though they got bumped up a bit from the CDAC review, they're still pretty modest in size compared to what we've seen coming before the Planning Commission. So generally speaking, I'm in favor of this project.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Janoff. And I would say if you ended up making the motion, I don't know if you will or not, but it certainly wouldn't be, it certainly would be fine if you wanted to add a condition for them to make some more variation in the architectural style if the commission wants to go in that direction. So I will go to Commissioner Clark, then Commissioner Thomas, and then Commissioner Raspy.
Thank you. I agree that this is an exciting project, and I'm happy to see this happening in Los Gatos. And I also am okay with it exceeding FAR. I think that they're better as detached units, so I'd hate to make them be attached just because of FAR itself, and also the development across the street will match it well, I think, and it does look open compared to that one. And then I agree with Commissioner Janoff's points about adding different details and everything. I think that you can actually make them look more different by doing that, and I definitely like to see that. My only concern is that making the units more expensive in the end, but I assume that they could be minor enough that that wouldn't end up happening.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Thomas.
I just want to say that I agree with what Commissioner Janoff and Commissioner Clark just said, and I just want to echo that this is a good example of a project that's being brought before us that I think I'm comfortable with it exceeding the FAR because of what it is like in the neighborhood, the rest of the neighborhood and across the street. And I think that if CDAC recommended the detached nature, I think that it would be very counterproductive to make them attached to fit the FAR. That's not the intent of the FAR. So I'm very comfortable with the moving forward with the application, and I do agree that I would be happy to vote to support to add some more architectural details, as Commissioner Clark said, though, making sure that it doesn't, increase the cost of the homes ridiculous, and an inappropriate amount.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Raspy. Thomas, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'll just join in my prior commissioner's comments. I too am supportive of the project. I think through their work with the CDAC, the reworking of the units, especially the single driveway as opposed to the 3 driveways, has opened up more possibilities. The use of open space, I think, is a big uplift to the property. Some additional detail would help. And my concern again was, from my earlier comments, was the size of each individual unit. I thought, for instance, 4-bedroom might have been a bit excessive. I'm happy to see more housing come into Los Gatos, but I want to make sure that it's not all housing at the very highest end. That is, we have perhaps some more affordable opportunities. But applicants' explanation of the use of the ground floor unit for perhaps elderly or disabled occupants, I think, makes a lot of sense. And so I would be happy to support this project with the modifications noted by Commissioner Janoff.
Okay, and I'll go back to Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add that I think that the those having a full bedroom and ensuite with a walk-in shower and everything on the first floor does make this a much more accessible type of housing. And I think that the location for that is also appropriate because it is close walking distance to all of the necessities. It's walking distance to multiple grocery stores, pharmacies, and schools. And so I think that it is a really good example of how it's a smart place for the town to approve projects like this, because it does allow for people of varying abilities to have access to homes and have access to all the amenities that they need without having to get into a car.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Thomas. Vice Chair Barnett, and then I will comment as well.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little verbose here, but I want to give my reasons for supporting the application. One of them is that the consulting arborist found that 10 of the trees are not suitable for preservation, and those were the mulberry, the walnut, and the sweet gum, and that they don't measurably add to the site. That the zoning compliance is in compliance with the setback requirements, height, parking, private open space, and lot coverage. I think also joining my fellow commissioners, I think the FAR exception is warranted because it qualifies under the applicable code section. I think the recommendations of Mr. Cannon were largely followed, but I agree with Commissioner Janoff that some additional architectural features would be appropriate. The residential development is similar in size and mass and bulk to the scale in the neighborhood. And the FARs and square footage are in line with many of the homes on in Laurel Mews, and in fact exceed the same on the same side on George Street, excuse me. I think that the size of the homes is reasonable with respect to the FAR, and I would support a motion to approve that with the two corrections relating to the architectural detail and the change in the conditions relating to the number of driveways.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair Barnett. And I'd like to comment as well. I liked this application when I saw it on CDAC, and I continue to like it. And since we've been very involved in the general plan and the housing element process, this is the kind of project that we do like to see, especially close to a school. Certainly we are pushing for smaller size units to make the units more affordable, but certainly at a school, you're going to have parents and children, and then with the first floor bedroom, you might have aging parents. And so those are all good things. And I think that the trade-off of having the first floor bedroom, even if it did add a little bit to the average square footage size of these units, made a lot of sense. So I think all in all, the project seems to be a good one. And I am fine, as other commissioners have stated, with adding a condition to have additional differentiation. But I agree that we want to keep the cost down. So having a balance on those two things, I think, is necessary. I also wanted to comment a little bit about the zoning that Commissioner Janoff started to allude to. I think this is a perfect example of a project where our current zoning is not in line with what we'd like to see in the housing element, to try and encourage more units and lower cost of units. So I do think that while we can't do this in this forum, it does speak to thinking about this in the part of the housing element process, is that we ought to think about some kind of incentive program where if they're replacing a single family home with 4 units like this is, that we can give them additional FAR. Certainly we don't want to give additional FAR if they're just going to change it into a 10,000 square foot house. But if it's going to be 4 additional units, it's something that we ought to think about and consider. So I'm just wanted to go on the record and say that we ought to think about going there as we move forward with the housing element and the resulting changes in our zoning code. So I will go back to Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. I just wanted to add that at our last housing element advisory board meeting, this exact example essentially came up, and it was something that was discussed, and we discussed how would we be able to have different FARs or allow for more exceptions to FARs automatically if there were multiple units being built on one parcel. So it's ironic that then this came up immediately. This is like the next meeting that we had. But I think that it's hopefully a good example for other people in town, because I think that this is exactly the type of increased density that we want.
Very good. So I think all the commissioners have commented. Oh, our town attorney has a comment.
So I just wanted to offer up some wording for a condition of approval to add regarding the architectural detail. It could read, add architectural detail in accordance with recommendations made by consulting architect to be approved by planning manager or designee.
Thank you for that. I think that's really helpful. And also we don't want to have them come back to the planning commission again and add more steps to the process. All right. So then, since everyone has commented, I would ask if we could have one of the commissioners make a motion for this project. Commissioner Janoff.
I'd be happy to make a motion for this project. So I move to approve the architecture and site application S-20-025, subdivision application M-20-008, to approve demolition of an existing residence, construction of 4 condominium units that will exceed the floor area ratio standards, and site improvements requiring a grading permit on property zoned RM5-12, APN 529-18051, applicant Home Tech Architecture, property owner Robert Bothman, St. George Partners. I can make the required findings for CEQA. I can make the required findings to approve the subdivision application. I can make the required findings by housing element policy HOU-8.1. I can make the required finding for the demolition of a single family residence. I can make the required findings for exceeding the maximum floor area ratio. I can make the required, I can make the required, see the required compliance with the zoning regulation and the compliance with the residential design guidelines. As well, we have considered the architecture and site applications, all in accordance with Exhibit 2. And I would like to add a condition of approval regarding the architectural improvements as proposed by Town Attorney Whalen, and to modify condition of approval number 61 to clarify the single driveway.
Thank you for that very thorough motion. And Commissioner Clark.
I second.
Okay, very good. Do any commissioners have any additional comments before I call the question? I think not. Okay, Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Raspy.
Yes.
Commissioner Janoff.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Vice Chair Barnett.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So it passes unanimously. And I'd like to ask staff if there are any appeal rights for this action by the commission.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The decision of the commission can be appealed to Town Council by any interested person as defined by Town Code Section 2910-020 within 10 days and on forms available online with fees paid. Final deadline is 4 p.m. on the 10th day.
Thank you for that. And for one, I'm glad that we were able to have this hearing so that we didn't have to continue it. I will go back to where we were when we went back to the public hearing, which was we were in the middle of subcommittee reports, and I do believe historic preservation was completed, but I did not check if the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee had met since we last met.
We have not met since the last meeting, and
Okay.
for that as well.
Okay, and also the Housing Element Advisory Board that Commissioner Janoff and Commissioner Thomas and I sit on did not meet either because we also gave the staff a lot of work to do on the goals and policies, so that they continued that meeting until next week. So then we have no more committee reports. Anything else for commission matters? I would like to wish Commissioner Clark best wishes for a very happy life. She's getting married this weekend. So I hope you don't mind me saying that in front of the commission. But congratulations to you and your husband.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Okay, I think that's all. So thank you, as always, for all of your service to the commission. And this meeting is adjourned.